Good morning. I'm Pete Najarian. This is The Take on this Tuesday morning, and the beginning of the week really starting off with a bang. As a matter of fact, you look back to yesterday, the markets looked very strong at the beginning of the day, and they continue to look very strong by the end of the day. I mean, we had major moves across all the major indices. When you look over at the Dow, up over 300 plus points. You look over at the NASDAQ, up over 200 points. Those are very nice, sharp moves to the upside. S&P obviously participating as well. So just a great broad participation across every single sector actually turning into the green. The one that was lagging early in the day, that was energy. Energy was struggling, but even energy turned around. So all the major categories in terms of sectors all moved into the green, and that was a pretty interesting day. Now, a lot of different factors going on. We also had gold, we had silver, a little bit of participation, maybe waking up just a little bit more and starting to move back up to the upside. Crude as well had a decent sort of a day, at least starting into last night and into today. Yesterday, still sort of hanging around that 36, 37 level, however. So that's something that, we'll be watching that very close, of course, but it's not a major move, but we're seeing a little bit of a lift in the price of crude. Now, yesterday, even the financials were a good participant yesterday. It was pretty great to see the movement that we'd seen there, especially when you look over at the regionals, up well over 2+% yesterday for the KRE. Then you look at the XLF and you look at some of the major contributors there. A really nice day across the board with it, whether you're looking at JP Morgan or Bank of America, these various names, all having some participation yesterday. Could there be another day, though? Can they continue to do this? This has been something that's been a headache for a lot of us for a long period of time, is when will the financials have more than a couple of days in a row where they can put back to back to back and then maybe week to week and start to move to the upside? We really haven't had a chance to see that. And what we have seen is the financials kind of wavering around. You look at the XLF trading right around that 25 level, and it feels like it's been there forever. Now, yesterday, some good volumes, but not as great as the volumes that we have had. It was not over 30 million yesterday, which is a little bit shocking. It was actually around 28 million, a little bit higher than 28 million, but still some great participation in some of these names. You look over at Apple, 1.8 million contracts trading there. Tesla, 1.3 million. Nikola, 493,000. And then you look at DraftKings and some of these other names, huge volumes. As a matter of fact, DraftKings yesterday, just under 500,000, 84% of the trade yesterday on the call side. And you could see that big participation in terms of the move that stock got as well yesterday. Now, Tesla's an interesting one because Tesla's one of these names that either folks seem to love it or hate it. There is very little in the in-between factor. But I will say this. We're talking about a stock that's up 400% year to date. So the fact that it's 16% off the highs, I'm really not sure that there are too many great arguments in this whole thing when it comes to Tesla. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in just a second. But when I look over at the NASDAQ yesterday, yes, semiconductors participating, obviously technology participating, but not covered nearly enough. And I continue to say it, the biotech world. When I look at the XBI finishing up over 5.5% to the upside, and I look at the IBB right around 5% on that move to the upside, that tells me that there's some other participants here, certainly, and many of those names obviously in the NASDAQ. So certainly something else that has to be recognized and the broad scope of what we're talking about when we're talking about these major moves. Now, as we get into today, a nice solid start to the day right out of the gate. Matter of fact, in the pre-market, the S&P indicated up about 30 points. You had the Dow up about 220. You had the NASDAQ up about 130, 135 points to the upside. So a nice steady move again to follow up what we'd seen yesterday. Now, early on, we're watching the Dow Jones pull back, not anything to be alarming, but up about 220, 230 points, now up about 150 points. But you are also seeing where the NASDAQ has made a nice shift as well. It was up 135, 140 points, now up about 160 points. It was up 170 points just a moment ago. What are some of the names that are absolutely exploding to the upside and causing this nice move again for the NASDAQ? Well, Tesla, Netflix, Facebook, Google, Apple. Those aren't the only names, but those are certainly some of the biggest contributors today. As a matter of fact, it's technology that's really contributing to this nice move that we are having right now in terms of the Dow itself as well, because we're seeing a little bit of what I was unfortunately talking about, which was the financials not great follow-up. And as a matter of fact, we're seeing some of the industrials as well starting to pull back just a little bit. So that's a little bit disturbing, but nothing to be too overly concerned about. But it sure would be great if we could see financials be a major participant more than just a day or two in a row. That would be something that maybe would stand out a little bit more for us. So that is the lagging aspect of what we're seeing in the markets. But as I talked about some of these leaders, we still have Apple and Microsoft and Intel and Salesforce and Tesla and Qualcomm and Nvidia and all those kinds of names. Really, the participants that are really continuing to participate to the upside. Now you look over at JP Morgan, that's down nearly 1%. Bank of America and Citi, they got a little bit pressure on them. Now let's not forget, one of the big stories of the day is going to be this Apple virtual launch. And that's something that I think a lot of people are wondering, well, when are we going to know more about the phone? Well, I don't think this one is going to be as much about the phone. It's probably going to be a little bit more about some of the other products. They've got that iPad Air and obviously the watch. So we're talking about wearables as well. I think those are going to be the more focal points that we see in terms of taking center stage, at least right now. And I think we're probably looking a little bit further out, unless there's some surprises. And of course, there always can be. We all know how Apple operates, and oftentimes they can surprise. I don't know that we'll see that today, but it certainly is a possibility. And as a matter of fact, that stock, really nice move to the upside and helping lead the Dow a little bit higher than where it is right now, which is about 0.5% higher or 150 points. So pretty nice move there. Now, I mentioned that we had a little bit of a waking up. We watched gold, and if you're not participating or watching that close enough, we're seeing a little bit more participation from gold and from silver. We even got a little bit of a lift today in crude, which is something that we've been watching. It just kind of move down, stair-stepping down, was in the low 40s, now into the upper 30s, call it 36, 37. But we're seeing a little bit of movement there as well. And because of that, we're seeing some of those energy names start to show up, not only on the unusual options, but show up in terms of some of the participation and a little bit of that movement to the upside, especially after a follow-up from yesterday, being in the red, then turning into the green, being that one big drag early on in terms of the sectors that were part of the markets yesterday. So silver, quietly, just take a look at a longer-term graph of silver, and you'll see what I'm talking about. It's still grinding around. It's been in this sort of consolidation phase for a while now, but maybe there's some sort of light that's shining right now, because the unusual options that we are seeing right now in the SLV, the quietly rising silver, well, we got a buyer of a couple of thousand of the October 30th expiring. These are the 30 calls, and they're only going for about 47 cents, but about 2,000 of those were bought. Now, the SLV at the time trading around 25.40. This is a pretty substantial move we're talking about over a month and a half period. So very, very interesting to see this. We hadn't seen the SLV hitting on the unusual options for a while. We had all of those hits earlier in the year, and we've talked about that time and time again, where we'd seen both silver and gold and some huge volumes that were hitting back in March, in April, in May, and then people started to pay attention a little bit when they got to June. But actually, the options have been way in front of some of these moves. So once again, maybe if this is the start of something, maybe we are looking at a pretty substantial move maybe coming up out of silver. Certainly it does stand up. I got to tell you, knowledge is king. You've got to understand the options world. If you do, you understand what I was just talking about with unusual options in the SLV. Here we are looking at something that's going out a little over a month and a half, call it October 30th expiration, but looking for about a $4.50 move to the upside. Pretty substantial. But time is of the essence, and that gives you a time frame of how long before these options are going to expire. So something needs to move between now and obviously the last week in October there for that to work. Now, if you understand all the Greeks, you understand the theta and the gamma and the vega and all the rest of that, you'll understand what I'm talking about. But if you do not, definitely get yourself educated. The Market Rebellion team is one of the very best, if not the best. I think they're the best in the industry. So worthwhile. Understand what's going on in the derivatives markets. It is the place where we are seeing so much growth, continued growth, and it's going to be something very, very fun as we get into 2021. Not that far out. We're going to continue to grow. Oh, by the way, we've got our virtual conference. If you have any interest at all, October 9th and 10th. It was going to be in Las Vegas earlier. Not able to do that, obviously, under the circumstances. So we're going to do it virtual, but it's going to still have all of the same folks that are going to be participating once again. We just had Jeff Mackey on last night at the round table. He's one of those guys that's going to be participating as well. Really looking forward to that. Always a lot of fun. Folks, have a great day of trading. I will see you today on the Halftime Report with Scott Wapner and the gang. Got my shirt and tie. I'm all ready right now. Let's go.